When I first saw the murder of George Floyd, I believe I was at work, and I saw the video. My mother sent it to me, I believe, and it's hard to put into words exactly how you feel when you see something like that. And I mean, Black folks in general have almost become desensitized, like, oh, it's another one, oh, it's another one, oh, it's another one. But this one was just so, the way that Chauvin just showed no remorse, showed that he didn't care at all, that life was leaving the body of George Floyd. It was hard to not feel like, why do y'all hate us so much? I was at work. I remember I went into the bathroom and I think I just started crying. I didn't really say anything to a whole lot of people. I just acted like I was okay, but I was really struggling, and I didn't really know how to, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to accept it. So for a while I was just sad, but that sadness turned into anger because that's what it needed to be. And then the anger turned into action, and it's been action ever since. You can't just stay silent in these things. So I've chosen to remain an independent activist. I'm not actually formally part of one organization. And I did so because I want everything that I fight for to be like my exact beliefs. If I were to join an org, I would then almost be giving myself, oh, what they're fighting for, or the way that they do things. And I'm not really a fan of that. I have like a full-time job during the week, but depending on what happens, depending on if there's an action going on, I will try to leave out of work early. I will, try to get to whatever I can. I never went out looking for a mic. I never went out looking to be in the front, leading chants, anything like that. However, like I said, I've always tried to support and be in a supportive role. And if I have the skill set to lead a chant or to lead a song or to come up with new chants or do some poetry or spoken word or writing or whatever it may be, I'm more than willing to do that. So yes, I'm an activist, but I'm just fighting for my life. I'm fighting for lives that look like mine. Our community here is very diverse in the sense that it's not just Black folks fighting for Black folks. It's not just Latinx folks fighting for Latinx folks. It's not just Indigenous fighting for Indigenous. We realize here that all of those struggles are interconnected, intertwined, and we share all of those spaces together. We are inclusive of the Indigenous. We make sure that we say Native Lives Matter. We have Indigenous dancers before many of our actions. We have a land acknowledgement that whose land are we on? It's stolen land. It is Native land. This was never ours to begin with. And we make sure to include that in most, if not all, of our actions. It's definitely a solidarity-led movement, not only between different races, different nationalities, different religions, different sexual orientations. We make sure to include every single person who is oppressed, who is being oppressed by white supremacy and capitalism. And we understand that the people united will never be defeated. And I think Minnesota is a good interpretation, a good example of that fight, because that's how we fight here.
If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down.
When I heard the verdict, I felt obviously relieved. I was not expecting that at all. That was the last thing I was expecting. That's what many people said. That's what we were least prepared for on that day. We had a march scheduled. The lead organizer was TCC for J, Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar Clark. We didn't necessarily know what that march was going to be. We didn't know if it was going to be a march of celebration. We didn't know if it was going to be a march of, we really have to take these streets because they didn't give us any form of justice. And honestly, we were the least prepared for guilty on all 3 charges. We were the least prepared for that march. One of my friends, DJ, he even said on the mic, like, we don't really have any chance for us getting our way. We don't really have any chance for us getting justice. So just bear with us as we go through this. So we were prepared for the worst as we needed to be, but it turned into just a brief celebration of us getting the justice that George Floyd deserved, the justice that we have fought for continuously since the day he was murdered. But at the same time, it was very bittersweet because we shouldn't have to be on the edge of our seat 11 months later trying to see if the murder that we all saw was going to be ruled a murder. We shouldn't have to be in the face of National Guard, in the face of razor wire and jersey barriers and fences and boarded up courthouses and jails. And we shouldn't have to be there for us to realize, or for us to be told that the murder that we saw was a murder. So until we are expecting justice, our work will never be done. That's why we still had the march, because they think, oh, no justice, no peace. Well, that's the justice they wanted, so they'll be peaceful now. No, justice for us is having no more George Floyds. And justice for us would have been not needing to protest for Daunte Wright during the trial of the murder of George Floyd. We had another black body taken from us unjustly by the police just north of Minneapolis. They claim it was an accident, but 26 years on the job, Daunte Wright was 20 years old. She was a cop longer than he was alive, and now she mistakes a taser for a gun or a gun for a taser. It's time and time again that we do not get the time to breathe. We do not get the time to enjoy the little victories that we have. So even when we got the guilty verdict, we weren't expecting it. We were in the midst of a celebration. We were in the midst of continuing fighting, and I'm mid-speech, and someone comes up and whispers to me, they just killed a 15 or 16-year-old girl in Ohio. The police just shot and killed somebody. So again, it came from, we were on a trial waiting for the verdict, and then they killed somebody. And now we get the verdict and we're celebrating, then they killed somebody. It almost seems like we're not allowed to have the slightest bit of joy without them taking another life.
Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I see the city and the state moving forward, knowing that we have the power, that we as the people have the power. I think a lot of our elected officials and politicians have kind of shown that they don't care, because since the murder of George Floyd, what has changed? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that they've done, the only place that they spent their money was fortifying downtown and bringing in the National Guard. We said defund the police. They said okay, but then gave them more money. We said defund the police. They said okay, but then brought in more cops. We said abolish the police. They say okay, then bring in the National Guard. So I think they've done a good job at telling on themselves. And there's definitely a push for, we don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, we don't care who you are. If you are not fighting for our benefit, us as the people, you're not gonna get our vote. We are going to call you out. We are potentially gonna pull up. Some of my favorite organizers at the Racial Justice Network, Nakima, the Minnesota Justice Coalition with Jaylani and a bunch of lead organizers, and have almost created their own, call it Operation Pull Up, where if you have a job to do and we feel you are not doing your job, we are going to pull up at your house. We were just at Pete Orbit's house last week and this week. He was the Washington County prosecutor. He is the Washington County prosecutor who was responsible for bringing just the manslaughter charges against the police officer that killed Daunte Wright. Well, we want murder charges. We demand murder charges. If you're not going to give them to us, we are going to pull up. And they've done that twice now. And the second time he came out and got into an argument, a conversation back and forth with Nikema Levy-Armstrong, who is a civil rights attorney, got in a back and forth conversation and basically told on himself. At first he was saying, I can't. And then he said, I choose not to. And they're like, so you do have the choice to do it, but you're choosing not to. So now they're demanding that a special prosecutor be brought in because he's incompetent. He can't do his job. And if you can't do your job, we're gonna pull up. And that's kind of the sentiment we have here. We've had multiple actions outside of the governor's residence during the housing crisis, during the polar vortex in the state, when the high was -30, and they were still evicting tent encampments under the guide of Mayor Fry and Governor Walz. And they had an action where they went up to Mayor Fry's condo, put up a banner that said no more evictions. And there was like a big headline like, oh, protesters terrorized Mayor Fry in his house. Terrorized? You're kicking unhoused people out into the streets in -30-degree weather. That's terror. That's what terror is. Putting up a banner on your $1 million condo. Their definition of violence obviously is different from ours.
I think singing songs of freedom is a very important thing, because if we think back to the slave ships, right? That's all they had. That's all they could do to uplift one another.
I think it's important, very important for us as a people to celebrate the little bit of victory that we get. Obviously, we have a lot of work to do, but we've come from not being allowed to read or write to being able to be great authors, great poets, great writers. We came from singing songs on the slave ships to singing songs about whatever we want. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's a very beautiful thing, and we like to incorporate that here when we can, because being your true Black self and whatever you want that to be is a form of liberation. To have that freedom to express yourselves however you so choose, that is where our liberation lies. And that's why that's been included. That's why I'm honored to, whenever I'm asked to do that, I will. My plans for the future are basically just remaining in the streets. I feel like since 2020, you never know what next week is gonna hold. You never know what next month is gonna hold. It's really hard for me to look forward into what may come. All I know for sure is that I've come too far to go back now. I can't. If I just fade into the background, people are gonna be like, well, he was a fraud. Like, yes, people need to take breaks. People need to take care of their mental health. But after being this active, after becoming part of this community, I'll never leave. I can't leave. So regardless of what's going on with the state of the world, I'm positive that the police are still going to be killing Black and brown people. I'm positive that people are still going to be oppressed all throughout this world. I'm positive that capitalism will still be exploiting people. So I'm still going to be fighting for what I know is right. My name is Brandyn Tulloch, and I'm an artist and an activist.